I want to dive into understanding what sets us apart as humans, and that is a story. The story is what's key to everything, to describe everything that your organization is going to do. But where video shows its power, it's in showing of that story. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today, is really the showing aspect of your story. And the story that you tell. And I'm going to be referencing a book that was written not too long ago called Story Driven by author Bernadette Jiwa, and she has these 10 things that are key for your story. I'm going to reference a couple of those throughout the presentation. So at any point in time, if you have questions, this is a flexible time. If you want to, like, quote unquote, interrupt me and say, hey, I've got a question about that, please feel free. I know that some of you out there have seen the work that we've done, but I want to dive deep into the concepts of how we really, what we really look for as our organization and how we approach other nonprofits in what they do. So one of the 10 story-driven aspects that Bernadette talks about is reinforcing your core values. And the big elephant in the room, obviously, number one, is funding situations, whether it's federal, trickling down to state, and also coming out of a pandemic that kind of slowed the process of funding sources and this and that. So what happens in those situations is that individuals, corporate sponsors and donors, and foundations become really key to really pitching your story to, and also really highlighting what you've established as an organization. If you've survived through all those things, the pandemic and then and federal cuts and this and that means your story is strong, that you stuck to your core values, you've reached the audience that you're trying to reach, and that's what sustained you, because those were tough times. I don't have to explain that to you. You've lived those. As if you're a fund developer, you really know right then and there how difficult it has been and what you have to do, say, and achieve to get to what you want them to do is to support you monetarily. But a lot of that is having to show exactly what you mean about your core values, how that works, who you are looking for or who you're looking to tell these things. And so really know why your mission is important, how you illustrate that. Who are you partnering with? Who are you collaborating with? What does that look like? And how are you showing your usefulness in the community? Last week I got a call from an MSU Landscape Services, in which they found us and they were talking about, we're up against some budgetary situations, potential budgetary situations. And so we can throw stats, we can throw pictures, but what we can't do as an organization is really tell our story through a video. A video is probably necessary to really prove where our services lie, why we are important. And that was such a huge shift for me in that situation, because the simple fact is I've spent decades, I know that Megan mentioned in the intro that I spent over 10 years. We can double that. I think that I missed that part in overviewing the bio, but I've been spending years upon years trying to prove our worth to the community and what we do and how we do it. And now it was such a shift to hear somebody saying, we need you to help prove our worth. And so that's what's changed. And being able to use that tool, the video tool, to help tell that story, share that story, show that story is what's the most crucial. So, worrying about what your audience is saying. What are they telling? How are you using them to tell or reinforce you as an organization? Who are you bringing in, and so forth, and that. So the next story-driven aspect I want to focus on through that is building brand loyalty and giving clients, volunteers, donors, and teammates a story to tell. The first one I'm going to be showing you here in a little bit is about collaboration. That's what's huge. And the nonprofit community in different areas, even within the state, collaborate on a regular basis because there's situations or services that one doesn't do that the other one does, or there's an audience of people that one is trying to reach, the other one has complete access to, and it's about that collaboration. For instance, during the pandemic, Catholic Charities, they were known as Cristo Rey at that point in time, collaborated with the Greater Lansing Food Bank because Cristo Rey had a kitchen, Food Bank had food, and so it was one of those, and the pandemic was happening, it was one of those marriages right then and there that was really key. Or All the Above Hip Hop Academy and Grit Glam Guts. I don't know if you guys know Grit Glam Guts, but those are two audiences that focus on youth, and they did some collaborative stuff around Grit Glam Guts' women. What is that? There's a day at the Capitol, which it's like it focuses on young women and so on, and they did a whole 3-day thing with that, and then they collaborated with All the Above on that. And then out in Holland, there's two organizations, one called Community Works and one called 360, that collaborated on a mural project that's now a festival. It's like a 2 to 3 day festival in which they focus on economic and community development in Holland and Grand Rapids. And it's just amazing to see those two organizations come together to outreach to who they touch, and then it culminates in a nice mural festival every year that that closes out summer. So that's and the other aspect is let's go into the first sample. And I know I mentioned Cristo Rey / Catholic Charities. So this is a good example of what I mean by collaboration.
This is what our mission is, to provide menstrual products to homeless and low-income people. We do that by distributing to other charity partners, and Cristo Rey is exactly the kind of charity partner that we want to distribute to because they support so many people and they're such a life force in this area.
Well, in the past I used to actually had a very good job, and I was capable of buying products for my wife and two daughters that I have now. But times are rough, and my wife got ill, and everything went down the hill. So it's good that the community like this help out, and I appreciate that.
We have a personal needs room that has feminine products, diapers, items such as shampoo, conditioner. They fill out a form, they tell us what type of feminine products they use and need. Along with the other personal needs, they can get that one time a month from us.
What I love about this is we can help all kinds of people. Everyone has a story. They come from all walks of life, different countries, different racial and socioeconomic backgrounds, levels of education, and we serve them all. For a man to ask for feminine products can be somewhat embarrassing, but he does it for his wife and for his daughters, and he helps them get what they need, and it's out of the love of his heart, and then in turn that's because generous people bring these supplies to us so that we can give them out to people like Magin.
It released me a lot of pressure. It was a saver, and all the people that they get together and do this, I thank them very much. And there should be more like that in communities to help each other.
So that was a collaboration, obviously, with Catholic Charities, formerly Cristo Rey, or Cristo Rey, now Catholic Charities, and Helping Women, period. Any questions on that? Any collaborative stories that any of you have that you want to share, or? No? Okay.
There's no, I don't know what you're talking about collaboration, so. I mean, we could, there's a nonprofit hub, which I know you're a part of, I forgot that, we should do a video. Hey, I'm a person.
Awesome. Yeah, that wasn't what I was leading to, but yes, okay, fair enough. Yes, no, but that's one of the huge aspects of how you can really look at reaching multiple audiences, because that's two nonprofits coming together for one program that benefits them both, but not only benefits them both, benefits their audience exclusively, because Maheen, like I said, he's first generation, and this was just one of those aspects in which he needed to find a solution. And Helping Women, period, provided a solution with what they are doing to Cristo Rey, because, coming to that audience, it's huge. But not only that, but it's a good outreach for looking at, the foundations and the corporate sponsors, as like, oh, well, what are you doing for the community? And this folk. It's just a huge part of not only your story, but several stories all together. And just following that one person's trek, that one person's need right there in the moment, and finding a solution and making him, as we segue, basically the hero of that story for his family, because it was up to him to find the solution, because the other folks were down for the count. They needed that help. He needed to be that person. And that's what brings me to this next section, is really talking about the hero. Who the hero of the story that you're putting out there is. And a lot of folks realize that, or a lot of folks get it confused thinking that, well, it must be the organization. But that's not the case. For most of the stories that really have the most impact, and the way that you humanize that story is the organization, such as yourself, in a situation like that is kind of more like the Yoda character. As what I mean by that is, like, basically they're the guide. They're the ones that are showing the way to make either the volunteer, make the client, or even, a certain staff member the hero of that story. And because the organization themselves are providing that space of like, here's the tools that you can use, but here's how you can use those tools. Here's how you can better your own community because of what we've put in your path. And that's what makes the better story. If you guys ever heard of Story Brand by Donald Miller, it's along those similar lines in which the hero is obviously the customer, or like I mentioned in here, either the client or the employee or the, an individual that is being put in the space to take the tools that the guide, the overall organization, and that's why I call it Yoda, and like the heroes like Luke Skywalker. I know you probably got this. I know I make Star Wars references, that's okay. Star Wars, and if you want to talk Star Wars, we can talk Star Wars later, but that's how I like really dive into this and how this works. And so for a good example of what I mean by the client becoming the hero, check this one.
I actually learned about the program through my sister. When she started the process in building her home, it was great. Like, it was a lot of volunteers, and we all just had a good time on site helping build her house, so it was a great experience. I mean, for me, my personal experience, it's been amazing. Just being able to be hands-on, helping at other houses as well as ours, and just getting to know everybody. Everyone is so friendly and nice and resourceful. Currently, we stay with the children's grandmother. It's just not enough space. The kids share a room, I share a room, and it's just time for us to have our own space.
We were downstairs on school, and then we just heard a scream, like a loud scream. And we went upstairs, and she was like, she got accepted. And we was happy. She started crying.
My children, they're my motivation. I do what I do for them to have a better life and to have stability. A lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things I'm still learning through this process that I'm gonna, keep with me going forward as far as like budgeting. I'm still learning how to do that. All the classes that I've attended has been very helpful. Habitat has some amazing staff, very helpful, very encouraging. Like I say, still to this day, I'm still working on some things, and Habitat, your staff has just been there the whole way. Encouraging word and just more resources. Even though I'm done with the sweat equity, it's still available to me. They still make sure I'm on the right track. We're very appreciative. We can't wait to move in and to have backyard parties and everything else.
And that's like a true encapsulation of what I mean by becoming the hero, is going and approaching Habitat, being accepted in their program, learning all the things that they need to learn, and then not only developing their home, but also teaching their family how to do it as well. And that's exactly what, how you need to push your folks in through video in that way as well. It's like, how do you describe this story that you're trying to tell? How are you showing it? And the best way to show that is through the people you interact with on a regular basis, because those faces could be familiar. Those stories are, resonate, and what's really key about it is you're showing how your organization has taken an active role in the changing of somebody's whole situation. And so and so that's a perfect, like I said, encapsulation of how that goes.
Have you ever seen it done effectively where maybe not like the organization that the video is about, but have it be where sort of like a group of people, like a group of entire volunteer base, or another organization having that as a hero? have you ever seen that done effectively, or does it really work to have like just a single person?
No.
Or a small group of clients or something like that?
Now, when you say organization, what exactly, what do you mean?
Like, let's say we were to do a video on like the nonprofit hub, you know, would it be effective for it to be like, CFC helps and, all these organizations are the sort of the heroes of the story kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, one example that we have is we were approached by Rathbun Insurance to tell, because they wanted to highlight Ellie's place. And so what we did with that was we told the story of their interaction, their role of their team going in there, and the importance of why they support Ellie's Place, how they do that, and then, because what Ellie's Place provides, it provides a situation that they can come in and help. And so I know that, and so that is kind of similar to what you're saying, is like as an organization, yeah, you can bring in, you can just control that narrative in a way where it's like, here's the space, here's what we're doing, we're bringing you to what this business is doing. Or like, for another example, is we did a video actually for Child and Family Charities in which we captured, I think it was either Jackson or MSU FCU, one of those two, on a volunteer situation in which they went to Angel House.
Okay.
And when they were doing some renovations there and what they did along those lines, and showing that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's along the lines of what you're asking.
Yes.
In a way where it's like you can feel the presence of the main organization through the eyes and faces and actions of another.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another thing I wanted to focus on, and I know that this is how this presentation all started with the initial conversation with Rita, was I know that this month was actually supposed to be a focus on the major buzzword, or buzz letters, I suppose you could call, coming into 2025, which is DEI. And how that is actually a strength, and how you can incorporate DEI visually without having to say DEI. Because we all know sometimes what people, the negative connotation of how that can be portrayed, of like the way that it's said. But the fact of the matter is, your audience and your people are who they are. And it's hard to like say, well, we gotta eliminate this and that, when in fact, who you reach may not look like you. Who you employ may not look like you. But that's the whole thing. Who are you as an organization? How do you tell your story through that situation? How do you outreach to those in need? Because that's part of your story. That's exactly what it is. It's like, and so it's DEI in I think the humanizing of the story part of nonprofit organizations and foundations and this and that is the people. And whoever, and a lot of times you employ people that really represent your community that you're trying to serve, because you like to see like faces work with like faces, like people work with like people. But also, it's also part of your mission. And this is all about, well, I said at the very beginning, illustrating your mission. What is your mission? Who are you working with? Who are you targeting? And that's the main thing. It's all about the organic way of developing the story. And you can call it DEI, you can just call it, hey, this is how we are serving. It's all the same thing, because the fact of the matter is, what you're trying to illustrate is the services and the focus that you're trying to make to bring in the dollars to speak to the individuals to help support what you're doing, to speak to the corporations to help support what you're doing, and also appeal to the foundations that are out there providing the community dollars that come in so that you can continue to do what you do. And that's what the whole gist of it is. And I know that, like I said, it's a buzzword or buzz letters that don't need to be buzz letters, because these are things that you've been doing all along. It just may happen to feel in the weird climate that it can be, that are we doing this right? Are we not? You've been doing it right all along, because you are completely telling the story of what you're doing. And so I want to show one last example of how an organization really appeals to community through what they do without having to say certain things. They don't have to say certain things, or they don't have to be certain things. And so
if we have a community member that isn't feeling like they belong, if they're feeling like their community doesn't actually want them there, that person might start to feel anxious, depressed, angry. And when a person's feeling like that, they may turn to things like self-harm, suicide, substance use.
Some communities have a certain level of openness as far as talking about issues like substance use disorder or mental health challenges. And with other communities, it's still a very sensitive topic. And what I think the St. John's Call-In Coalition is doing is that first step in the door. They are this really comfortable, well-established by now community presence.
The goal is to make everybody feel loved, respected, valued, and most of all, not alone.
We started a program called the Upstanders, and we're really trying to bring the idea that everyone belongs by teaching kids differences of people and how we can celebrate those differences in people.
I hope to see people becoming more open-minded. We have a non-binary gay child, and I would like them to grow up in a community that I know is safe for them.
I think it's just really awesome to have kids be able to see themselves but also learn about others and be able to have that experience. I think that's really important.
We know that suicide doesn't discriminate, but we also know that there are certain risk factors that put some communities at increased risk for suicide.
We're talking about folks with trauma. We're talking about folks who have less access to resources because those resources aren't in their areas.
We can read the reports from the Trevor Project, from other research that shows that, certain communities are at additional risk, but taking that research and transforming it into action, hosting events like the Pride event, that was an incredibly powerful event, especially for a small town like St. John's. It's incredibly powerful to have a large community event that's supported by a lot of the local organizations, provides a space for youth and community members to feel safe and accepted in their own community.
Everywhere you are, there's always going to be at least one queer person who wants to celebrate and who wants to show the world who they are. In a place like St. John's, that's important because not a lot of events are out like that.
Once you get the opportunity to tell people like, hey, I see you're different. I like that you're different. You're part of the community. Come be part of our community.
We don't want people to feel scared and not live authentically. We want that for ourselves. Why shouldn't we want that for everyone? With this work, we can help create those spaces for people and a sense of belonging for everyone in the community. Everyone deserves that.
And just to lean on that collaboration aspect, as you saw the logos at the end, it was a collaborative aspect to produce that video by four or five different nonprofit organizations, all based in the Mid-Michigan area. And so led by the Mid-Michigan Health Department. That was a contract that we had with them. That's they said, we want to focus on St. John's Call-In Coalition. And so that's how that story was shown and broadcast. And so as an important message for a lot of different aspects for what they do, especially coming out of a small town like that. So how are you sharing your story? So another story-driven aspect is to help your audience stay motivated to talk about the work that you're proud of. How do we do this? What are the areas, how are the different aspects that we have out there are we going to use, such as using social media. I know that social media is not, is probably one of the best ways to do it, but that's also a situation in which incorporating video in the social media aspect really falls on the organization itself. The best way to use social media is right in the moment. Whether it's an event, whether it's just like, oh, I want to highlight this person at this moment. For instance, Big Brothers Big Sisters, highlighting a big right in the moment, highlighting a little right in the moment. You know, following up with volunteers as they're volunteering. You know, catching that, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, however you want to do it, the best way to use video is right in, you know, since we're all equipped with a video camera at all times, whether you like it or not. It's, this is a tool to really help generate that type of media. And it's really powerful. But it's also fleeting. So catching it in the moment is the key, because as we know, as we all do it, if we're on TikTok or Instagram, we got our thumb ready to move to the next thing. So make sure that you're capturing that when it's happening, because it's sometimes, although there's the memories function, and sometimes there's, like LinkedIn sometimes shows you something that happened 3 weeks ago for some reason. I don't know why that's part of their feed, but it is what it is. It's like, oh, wow, this is great. This was great to see 3 weeks ago, not today. But yeah, so that's a key aspect in which video is really important in a social media stance in that moment, because that sometimes you can't recreate those spontaneous situations, and you want to make sure that you're capturing your heroes out there doing the day-to-day stuff, especially when it comes to volunteers. That's probably one of the biggest ways to use social media, is to catch your volunteers doing what volunteers do. Sometimes volunteers don't get enough credit for what they do, even though they're crucial. They are crucial to nonprofit success. And they are heroes, because they're taking time out of their day. I know there's some organizations that have a paid day still. They don't have to show up that day, but they do. And that's what's really, really key to telling your story. That is a huge aspect. When it comes to using, the other thing is, I'm not going to skip over AI. AI is tricky. There are ways to use that effectively. There are also ways that it can be used destructively. And you have to know when to do that. But plus, there's a plethora of tools. Not all AI is the same. Shouldn't all be shoveled in the same way. For instance, the creative tools can get you in a load of trouble, or even using stock video stuff, because the simple fact is that doesn't really help your cause if you're using third-party situations to describe what you're doing. Now, for those organizations that deal with privacy situations or foster care, like Small Talk or Child and Family Charities, sometimes you have to use situations in which stock is necessary, but replacing it with AI people is not what you that's not the route you need to go, because your story has to remain authentic. And it's hard to recreate AI-wise. It's very difficult to recreate what your mission stands for, who you work with, and all this other stuff authentically by recreating it artificially. People see through it. Any younger donors that are coming up are going to see through it a mile away and be like, I'm not so sure, stuff like that. So make sure your media that you're gathering for your social media, for your marketing, you have to be careful that you don't skew it towards the inauthentic, because that is a detriment to the mission that you're trying to put out there and the story you're trying to tell. Now, when is it necessary to use a professional, and why would you use a professional in the telling of your story? Well, number one, using a professional allows a third party to really ask questions that you may not ask, because you're already in it. You understand the mission, you understand the service, you understand this, and it's like another observer coming in and asking, well, why? How? What do you mean? And asking that of your volunteers, of your donors, of the people you work with. And it creates this new way, this almost like a proxy visionary to create the story you're trying to tell, because the simple fact is this person does not work where you work. They're trying to get to the heart of your story. And a professional also creates something that is compact and detailed and creative, that you are proud to put on your website, you're proud to put in your events, because these are the situations that really tell the story through a third party. And it really is beneficial to you to allow that to happen. So going into that, thinking about that aspect, here's a couple things that I want you to think about. Obviously, this is all in the context of video. Create a video. I always say that a video should be on almost every page of your website, because that page is where people are coming to. Video is what people like. Plus, it gives a 2-minute to 3-minute overview of what you're going to find on that page, and a little bit more of your organization in a focused situation. So think about creating a video that follows the question of, what is your mission? Why is it important? Who am I working with? Stuff like that. Answering those questions in that compact manner. And also thinking about, like I mentioned before, using social media, using the phone, your video camera on your phone, to capture those stories of those heroes that you work with, that you interact with every single day, because those are the humans that are perpetuating what your story is, what it means to them, what it means to the community, and how to have your organization grow. So that's really it. Basic premise: how to humanize your story is to show, not tell. Just show, not tell, because you're in the visual medium, and being able to show that is what's the most important aspect of really illustrating what you do. Any questions?